So item number one that I'm going to talk about is sensory input. We can't always control the environment that we're in, but we can take steps to make the environment more comfortable. So sensory input means you're modifying simple things like music. And this sounds like common sense, but it's so important to, first of all, I think I'm going to keep it real and say you don't need to listen to, handpan music. You don't need to listen to meditation music unless that's your groove, unless that's your flavor. If you want to listen to whatever you want to listen to, pick a track that puts you in the zone, right? Find headphones that fit comfortably, that you're not worried about falling out of your head, and pick a track that puts you in the zone. Sometimes we maybe want to be social at the gym. Just keep in mind that sometimes being social comes at the cost of embodied movement. And if that's what you like, that's what you like. But I do recommend headphones. I do recommend music that puts you in a flow state. The next thing we'll talk about is visuals. So if you're like me and you get very easily visually distracted, or even if you're self-conscious, which I struggle with as well, what I tend to do, and again, this isn't everyone's flavor, I have what I call pratyahara. Now in yoga, that means withdrawal of the senses, because the five senses draw us out of being within ourselves. I call it pratyahara paradise. And when the space is available, I put myself in a corner and I'm just looking at the corner. Every once in a while I'll see something out of my peripheral vision, but if I really need to be in the zone because I'm working on something that is out of my comfort zone, or because it's just been a day, the last thing I want is this constant visual input distracting me from the work I'm doing internally as well as the work I'm doing externally. So if there's a way to make your visual fields less overstimulating, if you're comfortable with it, I recommend taking that. Another thing that I do, and this applies to the sense of touch as well as vision, is I take a towel in my favorite color and I simply lay it out on the gym mat. Number one, it feels nicer. Number two, if I'm in child's pose, I'm putting my face on my towel. I'm not putting my face on the gym mat. So my true recommendation is do things that help you with this sensory input. Again, I'm going to repeat, the more comfortable we are with our sensory world, the more we can pay attention within. I can kind of talk about this point a lot, so let me hone it in and then wrap it up. I also sometimes will have, a beverage of choice, and again, I say these things, whatever your gym rules are, be respectful of them. If you aren't supposed to have items out, don't have them out. Be respectful of people at the gym. People at the gym will, in theory, be respectful of you. It's a shared space. But if, something small that I do is I'll bring in my favorite coconut water, or I'll go to my favorite coffee shop and bring in, something that I enjoy, specifically on my stretching only days, which is kind of my next point. Bottom line is take this sensory world and make it yours, right? Follow the gym rules, but do these little things like bringing a towel, headphones, clearing visual clutter to really make the space yours and really be embodied in your stretch. The more embodied we are, quite frankly, quite candidly, the less time we're wasting. Number two, the second point on my list is visibility. Again, this kind of ties in. Your gym may not have a space designated for stretching, which mine doesn't, but it does have like little corners, and as long as you're out of the way, it's fine. Or your gym might have a space designated for stretching and you're still uncomfortable, because sometimes those stretching areas, they have mirrors there. So if there's a visual distraction, again, it sounds silly, but if you're like, let's say you're self-conscious, some days I don't want my legs to show. After I finish working out, I'll put on a pair of sweatpants, take these little steps to make yourself comfortable. It sounds like a pain in the butt, but it's worth it. After I finish working out, I'll keep a pair of sweatpants in my locker and I'll put on sweatpants. There you go, nothing to be self-conscious about. I can move around freely, I'm comfortable. Sensory input, visibility. The next item on the list is comfort, which I've said the word comfort so many times. The more comfortable you are, the more relaxed your body is going to be for stretching. So scientifically, yes, that stuff is nice and pretty, and scientifically speaking, in order to stretch and relax, we need to breathe, right? We need to have full diaphragmatic breathing. And once we can activate that diaphragmatic breathing, we can slow our heart rate and we can activate our parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. The more we take care of ourselves and tell our body externally, whether it's our favorite beverage, a towel, good music, the more we can get into that flow state and breathe. So sensory input, visibility, comfort, they all kind of tie together. The next point on the list is breathing, right? So a good way to tell if you're comfortable is, can you take the time to listen to your breath? And a lot of times when I'm, at the gym, let's say my normal range of motion, which it isn't today, is a pancake split. A lot of times when I'm at the gym, the second I put my body in a different position, my body's guarded because there's so much going on around me. So at the gym, you may have to take an extra beat or two to connect to your breath, but I highly recommend it. Take the time to connect to your breath so that you're not just sitting there trying to touch your toes, right? Now your body is relaxed, now your body's a little more melted. And trying to touch your toes becomes less of a fight or flight, like you're trying to deadlift something, and more of trying to touch your toes. Equipment. I use gym equipment to help me stretch. I try to be polite and courteous. I try to not hug it, whatever, right? We're at the gym, we're in a shared space. Follow the gym rules, be courteous, be mindful of other people. I use gym equipment to help me stretch. If your gym has straps, if your gym has a foam roller, a lot of gyms don't allow you to bring in your own equipment. Sometimes I'll bring in a mat. Sometimes I'm too lazy to bring in a mat, and I'll put a towel down on top of the gym mat because that signifies this is mine. The more comfortable we feel in our space, the more our body can relax. The equipment that I use at the gym to help me stretch is every once in a while. Now I'm not like a, heavy, I'm not like a heavy weightlifting girl, but every once in a while I'll use the little, I think they're called weight plates. The little, like, if this is the little bar that you lift the weights with, it's like the weights that go on the end. I call them weight plates because that's what they look like. But I'll take a weight plate as long as no one else is using it. I usually use the 5-pound ones. And I'll sit on a weight plate because what am I doing right now? I'm sitting on a bolster. When you're sitting on a weight plate, you're going to put yourself in that anterior pelvic tilt, and guess what? Now all of a sudden you have something underneath you, and reaching your toes is a lot easier. So use the gym equipment, every once in a while if you're comfortable with it. I'll take little weights and I'll, put them on the inside edges of my knees for my butterfly pose. I'll use the little 3-pound weights to help me with, a targeted oblique side bend. Oh, that felt good. So use the gym equipment. Don't be shy. Wipe it down when you're done. That's what it's there for. That's why you're at the gym, right? Timing. So when you stretch at the gym, typically you stretch after your workout. I don't recommend skipping stretching. So if you can, let's say you have an hour of time to be at the gym. You've allotted for yourself. or 30 minutes of time, say, okay, I gotta get in, I gotta get out. I don't recommend saying, oh, I'll go home and stretch, because you probably aren't gonna go home and stretch, right? You're there, you're at the gym. Try to carve out that time after your workout to get some stretching done. After your workout, that is when you're going to do static stretching, more passive stretching, and based on your goals, I'm just talking about basic stretching. I'm not talking about flexibility. Yes, I recommend stretching. I recommend stretching every time you go to the gym, and I recommend static stretches after your workout. That's my approach. That's the bare minimum. The maximum is dynamic stretching before, then your workout, then static stretching after. At the bare minimum, if I had to choose dynamic stretching before or static stretching after, I would not skip the static stretching after. That's just me. Carve out time, take care of yourself, get your stretching done. Now, something else that I recommend, if it's possible, if your time allows, is I actually recommend a dedicated stretch day at the gym. For two reasons. Number one, most of us probably aren't stretching enough or wish we had more time to stretch. And going to the gym to stretch means you're gonna stretch. And it sounds really silly and it sounds really simple, but once you do it, it's like, oh, this feels really good. Why didn't I start doing it sooner? Because again, when you try to stretch at home, you might get distracted, right? And this is doing two things. You're going to the gym. So number one, you're creating that solid habit of going to the gym. And number two, you're going to the gym specifically to stretch. So now you're teaching your mind, this is really important. I carved out time out of my very busy day just to go to the gym and stretch. And please, if you feel self-conscious about just going to the gym to stretch, remember, use a foam roller, use, something to if you need to justify it in that way, like, oh, I need to use a 3-pound weight, I need to go to the gym today, whatever. And by the way, like, nobody cares if you go to the gym just to stretch, as long as, again, you're being polite, you're being respectful, you're being mindful that it's a public space, and public spaces have rules to follow, and you're following them. But yeah, think about those reasons to just go to the gym and have a stretch day. And besides, it's divine. That's what I do. I go to the gym for my stretch day, usually on Friday. I have my little, coconut water or, my green tea. It's probably ridiculous. Like, here I am at this big box gym with, my green tea and my little towel and my headphones, and I'm just stretching. Trust me, nobody's judging me. They're not judging you either. So I'm gonna post some routines shortly after this. Those are just my tips to encourage you to stretch. And again, just to summarize and condense, get comfy, make the space yours, follow the gym rules, be courteous, stay connected to your breath. If you're losing your connection to your breath while you're stretching, because you're stretching in such a high sensory input environment, take that time to close your eyes and check in with yourself. Use the gym equipment, that's what it's there for. As long as you're, again, polite and respectful, no one's gonna say anything. If I had to choose between dynamic stretching before or static stretching after, I would choose static stretching after. That's just me. Quite frankly, if you're, watching this video, choose the option that works for you, that makes you excited to stretch. Should you stretch every day? Just about, especially if you're working out. I recommend getting it in after your workout. While you're at the gym, don't tell yourself I'm gonna go home and stretch, because you might not. I do recommend trying a dedicated stretch day. Again, this does two things. Number one, it gets you to the gym. And number two, it starts to train your mind that I deserve this. If you happen to hate stretching, again, remember those things that put you in the flow state, making the space yours, listening to music that you truly enjoy. Yeah, so that's it. Those are kind of my tips. And later on, I'm going to be rolling out a video of what my routine typically looks like when I stretch at the gym. Thank you for watching. Take care.